This is Keith Berkelhammer and this is ReefBum TV. Keeping up with water changes for a reef tank is very important. And in this video I'm going to take you through how I set up my water changing system to make that whole process extremely easy. Let's start with a sketch of my entire filtration system. In the sump I have two return pumps, with return pump number 1 set up to aid water changes. I installed two valves that are tied into the plumbing coming from return pump 1. When removing water from the sump for a water change, valve 1, which goes to the display tank, is closed, and valves 2 and 4 are opened, allowing water from the sump to empty into the slop sink. To replace the water drain from the sump, I use RODI water, which is stored in a 55-gallon drum, and pump this water into a second 55-gallon drum, which is used to mix together salt water. A pump in the saltwater drum is then used to pump new water back into the sump, replacing what was drained out. Plumbing the RODI and saltwater drums was fairly simple. Step 1 was to install the float switch in the RODI drum. I started by drilling a 1/2 inch hole near the top of the RODI drum. I then took the float body and inserted the washer over the thread, and put the thread through the hole. The important thing is to have the washer on the inside of the water reservoir. The nut is then attached and tightened with a wrench. I then insert the 1/4 inch blue tubing into the 1/2 inch compression nut with the threads towards the end of the tube. I tighten the nut, but carefully, making sure it is not over tightened. With the float valve installed, I move on to drilling a hole that will be used for the plumbing going from the RODI drum to the saltwater drum. Once the hole is drilled, I install a bulkhead. On the inside, I screw in a PVC barb adapter, which will connect the flexible tubing that will run from the pump sitting in the bottom of the drum. A hole is then drilled into the top of the drum lid for the pump's power cord. On the outside of the drum, I install a PVC fitting, some pipe, and a union, which will allow me to disconnect the drum to clean it on occasion. Ultimately, this drum will be connected to my saltwater drum. For the saltwater drum, I drill another hole that will be used to install another bulkhead. A union is then installed, allowing me to connect the RODI drum and also allowing me to detach the saltwater drum for cleaning. On the inside of the saltwater drum, I insert a PVC fitting to allow water from the RODI drum to enter. On the opposite side of the saltwater drum, I drill another hole and insert another bulkhead. Off to the side, I put together some plumbing with 2 valves that will allow me to do a couple of things, but more on that in a second. I installed the plumbing with the valves by screwing it into the bulkhead on the inside of the drum. A PVC pipe is then installed. And then flexible tubing is connected from a water pump in the bottom of the drum to the valves. When the valves are turned one way, I can circulate water constantly in the saltwater drum, and when they are turned the other way, I can pump water from the saltwater drum to my sump. Here are the RDI and saltwater drums plumbed together. And now in action, with RODI water being pumped into the saltwater drum. Back to my filtration sketch. To start a water change, as I mentioned before, I close valve 1, which leads to the display tank and is connected to return pump 1. I then open up valves 2 and 4 and turn on return pump 1, which pumps water from the sump to the slop sink. To replace the water in the sump, I turn the 2 valves in the saltwater drum that will allow me to pump water into the sump. Before I start my system back up, I close valve 2 and open up valve 1. Well, I hope you enjoyed that video. And for more videos like this one, please go to reefbum.com or visit the ReefBum channel on YouTube.